Hey, how's it going, and welcome back to Consuming Cinema, a show about making and pairing food and drinks from popular movies and TV shows. This week, we're talking about a film I wanted to do for Halloween, but luckily, this is a movie that transcends the horror genre. So today we're making a liver and fava bean risotto with a nice Chianti from The Silence of the Lambs. If you haven't seen The Silence of the Lambs, it's a 1991 Jonathan Demme film based on a novel by Thomas Harris that is one of just 3 movies ever made to win the so-called Big Five at the Academy Awards, taking home Oscars for Best Actress, Best Actor, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, and of course, Best Picture. The film follows a young FBI Academy student named Clarice Starling, who is given an assignment from her mentor to help track down a missing woman kidnapped by a victim-skinning killer named Buffalo Bill. Clarice is sent to interview another murderer in prison, the cannibalistic Dr. Hannibal Lecter, Buffalo Bill's former psychiatrist, with the hopes of gaining insight on and potentially locating Bill. And when Clarice first goes to speak with Lecter, he immediately tries to probe her psyche, being the psychiatrist that he is, to which she attempts to do the same right back to him. That's when Hannibal recites his now famous line,
"A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti."
Now, while it's never explicitly stated how Lecter consumes the census taker's liver, we know through his stunning by-memory drawings of Florence that Hannibal is a bit of an Italophile. So I thought, why not use this opportunity to show how to make a risotto? But first, we need to prep our fava beans. Now, you could use canned fava beans like these, or sometimes you might be able to find them frozen and referred to as broad beans. But luckily, I live near a Middle Eastern market where you can typically procure fava beans at any time of the year. And what you need to do with the fava is peel back this pea pod looking layer and find these inner seeds that resemble lima beans. Now, I should note that you probably need to look into whether or not you can actually eat fava beans, because believe it or not, these beans can actually be deadly to those with a deficiency of an enzyme called G6PD, or a glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency, which can result in jaundice, fatigue, or even death. So just be careful when you eat these, alright? Also, I find it fitting that Hannibal Lecter's iconic meal is comprised of both an organ and a deadly bean. And as you'll notice, while I bought a little over 2 pounds of fava beans, they don't really yield much after you peel them. And then once you've removed these inner seeds from the outer shell, we are going to blanch these in boiling salted water for 6 minutes. After which, we are going to immediately cool the fava beans in an ice bath. Now, believe it or not, we need to remove yet another layer from the fava bean. So what I found to be the best way to do this was by peeling back this dark little indent here as if it were a zipper, and then you gently want to squeeze the inside of that bean from the outer casing. So again, find that zipper and squeeze out the fava bean from inside. But to be honest, this was actually kind of a tedious process, so we're just going to go ahead and skip through that real quick. And once you've peeled and cooked all of your fava beans, we are going to cover them and set them aside until we're ready to incorporate them into our risotto. Next, for our wine, Hannibal specifically said he drank a nice Chianti, which should actually be pronounced Chianti, Mr. Italophile. But since I'm not on the budget of a wealthy psychotic psychiatrist, I got this Chianti, a 2017 Falsina Chianti Classico, which is in the $25 price range. Now what we're going to do is start the process of decanting our Chianti. To decant a wine, you will need a decanter, like this one I found on Amazon that I can put a link for below. Decanting a wine like a Chianti allows any sediment that may have formed to separate from the wine. It also allows the wine to breathe, enhancing the flavor through aeration. And to open this wine bottle, all you will need is a simple waiter's corkscrew, which is comprised of 3 main parts: the lever, also called the fulcrum, the worm, which is the literal screw of the corkscrew, and the foil cutter, which cuts foil. So we're going to start with that foil cutter, which we are going to use to cut the foil right beneath the upper lip of the bottle. And then we will remove the foil like so. Then we are going to screw in that worm as close to the center of the cork as possible, being careful not to go too far off to the side. And then once there is one knob of that worm left, we are going to use the lever to lift the cork from the bottle. And then, as you can see, we use the second stanchion of the lever to fully remove the cork. Now we are simply going to pour the bottle into the decanter to decant. And as I did, I realized I really wasn't sure if I was supposed to pour in the whole bottle. But after a quick little Google, I couldn't find anything that explicitly told me not to, so I just went with it and poured in the whole damn thing. Now it's time for the most unsettling part of this entire process, preparing our liver. In my case, I'm personally using a ½ pound of veal liver, but you can really use any liver you want. Just try not to use a human one. And there are several different ways you can prepare this liver, but I personally am going to finely chop it. And when you do, you want to make sure you cut out those white membrane parts, as they will become tough to eat. Now you want to chop the liver into small small chunks. And to be honest, this process gets pretty graphic, so I went ahead and censored the rest of it for you. It goes without saying that liver isn't always the most palatable meat to eat, so for this recipe, I recommend combining the meat with a cured pork. You could either use bacon, or pancetta, or guanciale, but today I'm going to use some prosciutto, which I will likewise chop up, before heading over to the stove to start our risotto. Our risotto starts by adding our chopped pork to a medium Dutch oven, and then we're going to crisp up this prosciutto a bit, and then add a little bit of olive oil if need be, before we add in our liver. Just like liver, prosciutto can be rather delicate, so you want to cook it on a little lower heat than you would a bacon or a guanciale. And all we want to do here is brown up the liver. We don't want it to cook too much or it will become tough. We also want to finish the cooking process later when we fold the meat into the risotto. And once the prosciutto is crisped up and the liver browned, we will remove the meat. Now we're going to make the rest of our risotto, which we'll gradually add chicken stock to, that we have warmed and waiting over here. Then to our Dutch oven, we'll add a couple tablespoons of olive oil, as well as a tablespoon of butter, to which we'll add 1 shallot finely chopped, and allow the shallots to soften for a minute before adding a half a cup of brown mushrooms, also chopped, and then stir those in a bit and allow them to soften as well, before adding some black pepper, as well as some chopped garlic, which by the way, I like to add salt to when I chop it as a tip from the great Action Bronson, which is why I'm not adding any other salt right now. Then we'll mix this all together, before adding 1 cup of our arborio rice, which is one variety of risotto rice, the most crucial ingredient to a good risotto. On high heat, toast up this arborio rice in our Dutch oven for a couple minutes, before then deglazing the pan with a cup of white wine, or in my case, I like to use vermouth because it's shelf stable. And all you really need is a cup, but I ended up pouring in the rest of the bottle I had. Risotto rice has a high starch content, which is what gives risotto its naturally creamy consistency. So stir it all together and allow that wine to cook down, and this is basically a summary of the risotto making process, cooking out liquid, because when all of this liquid is cooked out, you're going to add 1 or 2 scoops of chicken stock, and you want to stir that risotto on medium heat, allowing all that liquid to cook out as well. So add in the chicken stock little by little, and then stir the risotto until the stock cooks out. Under stirring will result in the risotto sticking to the pan, and over stirring can result in an overcooked rice pudding-like risotto. And then simply continue repeating that process, adding in the stock, cooking it out, and frequently stirring throughout. Then, at a somewhat arbitrary point in the process, a little over halfway through, I added back in the meat mixture. You could wait until a little later than I did though. And once you notice these individual grains of rice plumping up, you want to start checking them for doneness. You want the risotto to be creamy while still being able to feel that toothiness of the rice. And once you have the rice exactly where you'd like it, and you can wipe the spoon across the bottom clean, you then cut off the heat, before adding a tablespoon knob of butter, as well as some freshly grated Parmesan. I added about a half a cup, and some of our fava beans, which we'll stir in, and since they're already cooked, I wanted to save some of these fava beans for later as a garnish for the final risotto, and then cover the risotto while I move over to the table to plate. So into a bowl of your choice, add a few scoops of our liver and fava bean risotto. I added a little bit more than necessary so it would look good on camera. Then we are going to grate on a little bit more of our fresh Parmesan, and garnish with a little sprinkle of Italian parsley, as well as a few of those small but deadly fava beans. Now it's time to grab our Chianti. So into a wine glass of your choosing, I'm using the stemless variety, you will pour in your Chianti. And there you have it, your liver and fava bean risotto with a nice Chianti is finally done. Now there's nothing left to do but to taste it. And I have to say, this is really one of the best surprises on this show. Like, I'm actually kind of stunned. The natural earthy quality of both the liver and the fava beans go surprisingly well together, and also go great in a risotto. And if you're not adventurous enough to try liver or fava beans, just hang on to this risotto recipe because you can use it as a vehicle for any sorts of protein or vegetables you'd like. But how does this liver and fava bean risotto pair with a nice Chianti? And without repeating myself too much, this wine really goes well with the earthy nature of the risotto. Everything has a natural, organic quality to it that just really goes perfectly together. I highly recommend this Felsina 2017, and it really won't break your bank either. And while I genuinely thought this was going to be the first 2 thumbs down meal on the show, I gotta say it is definitely 2 thumbs up. Kudos, Hannibal. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd love to stay and chat, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Seriously though, her name's Bailey. You've probably seen her on the show before. She's my fiance. She's right here. Okay, well, bye. If you like the channel, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Tell us what you'd like to see. Please leave any video suggestions in the comments below. Full recipes will be included in a link in the video description. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Consuming Cinema. And don't forget to join us next week when we make a pairing from Scent of a Woman. Thank you for watching.